Start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress.
Who runs the U.S. government? Well, if you ask Hollywood, it's pretty clear. The president. He's meeting aliens, fighting off terrorists, and defusing bombs. But the reality is a bit more complicated. The United States is a country of more than 330 million people. It's also the largest economy in the world. Too much for one person to handle, so the load is split into three. First, you have the executive branch, which is the president and his secretaries. Then, you have the legislature, which is the U.S. Congress, and finally, the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court and its lower courts. Together, they run America. The president may not defuse bombs, but he or she is the face of the U.S. government. They're the head of state, the head of government, and the commander-in-chief. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution lays out their role to execute and enforce laws passed by Congress. Of course, to do this, they need help. Enter cabinet members. There are 15 executive departments in the U.S. government, each led by a cabinet member appointed by the president. The Department of State is an example. So is the Department of Defense. Beyond these, there are executive agencies like the CIA or the Environmental Protection Agency. These are also led by appointees of the president, but they're not cabinet members. So you've got departments, you've got agencies, and finally, you've got independent federal commissions like the Federal Reserve. Their heads too are appointed by the president. Now put together, this is a massive machinery. The American executive employs 4 million people. All of them are answerable to the president. And what does he, so far it's only been a he, do? The president must present annual budgets to the U.S. Congress. They can also propose legislations. While abroad, the president can negotiate treaties. They also decide America's foreign policy. Sometimes they also sign executive orders. Think of them as mini legislations. They explain how a law should be enforced or how it should be tweaked, but none of these powers are absolute. The Congress can reject any legislation proposed by the president. Any executive order can be struck down by courts, and all treaties must be ratified by the Senate. Same with cabinet appointments. The Senate grills the nominees first. They can only take charge if the Senate approves. The president doesn't look so powerful now, does he? Well, in the U.S., that's often the case. A partisan Congress can easily hold the president hostage. It can withhold money and reject legislations, but the symbols associated with the president hide those weaknesses. They make it seem like he's invincible. Which brings us to the second branch, the U.S. Congress. It's made up of 2 chambers. The upper chamber is the Senate. The lower chamber is the House of Representatives. The Senate has 100 members, 2 each from every American state. A senator is elected for a term of 6 years, and these terms are staggered, meaning 1/3 of the senators retire every 2 years, so those seats are up for re-election. The vice president presides over the Senate. He or she can also cast a vote if there is a tie, and yes, it does happen. Right now, the Senate is split 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans, so Kamala Harris has broken the tie 33 times. The House is a lot bigger. It has 435 members drawn from all U.S. states. Members of the House are elected for 2-year terms. Both senators and House members are elected directly by the people, but their powers differ. The Senate has certain exclusive powers, like approving cabinet appointments and ratifying international treaties. Meanwhile, only the House can initiate revenue bills. Plus, they can elect the president if the Electoral College is tied. It happened way back in 1824, but their primary job is to make laws. Anybody can write a legislation in the United States, but only a member of Congress can introduce it, either in the Senate or the House. Once introduced, the bill heads to the committees. Think of these as expert groups within the Congress. The Senate has 17 committees, the House has 23. Once the concerned committee approves it, There's a debate in the House. There are strict rules on how long you can speak and how many amendments you can seek. But the Senate is the Wild West. Senators can speak as long as they want during the debate, thus stalling the legislation. For example's sake, let's assume they played nice and the bill is passed. It then heads to the president's desk. If the president likes it, he can sign it into law. If not, he can veto it. Basically, send it back to the Congress. Now, the president's veto can be overridden if 2/3 of both chambers pass the bill again, but such unity is hard to imagine. In addition to all this, Congress also has a nuclear power, the power to fire the president, to impeach him. Again, there is a clear division of duties. The House introduces the charges, the Senate sits in judgment. If 2/3 of the Senate agrees, the president is fired. The same procedure applies to all executive employees. And now, the final branch, the judiciary. Right at the top is the Supreme Court of the United States, also called SCOTUS. The number of judges is not fixed. Instead, it is set by the U.S. Congress. Right now, SCOTUS has 9 judges. They are the final authority on interpreting the law. These judges are appointed by the president, but they must be confirmed by the Senate, and they don't have fixed terms. They serve until death, retirement, or impeachment. The U.S. judiciary has 3 levels. First is the district court, where the trial begins. There are 94 district-level courts in the U.S. Then the Court of Appeals, 13 of them, and finally, the SCOTUS. Now brace yourselves because things are about to get a bit complicated. What we just explained is the federal judiciary. There are state ones too. Each U.S. state has its own laws and constitution, so by extension, their own courts. These state judges are sometimes elected, not appointed. The same applies to the executive and the legislature. The president administers the country. Governors administer states. Again, powers are divided clearly. The federal government manages things like national security, foreign policy, and trade. The states handle more localized things, like health, education, and taxes, which is why laws differ so much in America. In some states, abortion is a crime. In others, it's a fundamental healthcare right. Now you know how America is run, with an elaborate division of powers. Like all democracies, there are checks and balances, tools to ensure one branch does not boss the other. So next time you see a Hollywood president defuse a bomb, don't buy it. He'll probably have to ask Congress first.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election. Explains how America chooses its president. Your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about how America votes and its global implications. U.S. Election Explained. Every Monday and Thursday only on Firstpost.